Hi, this is Teresa Jackson. Today I want to give you a tour of Adobe Photoshop's UI or user interface. It's important to note that I'm recording this tutorial with Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud for 2017. Every time Photoshop releases a new version, the UI is apt to change slightly here or there. Over the years, it's changed quite a bit. Most of the way it works and where things are found are pretty much the same though. So if your version of Photoshop looks a little different than this, then you're either on an older version or possibly you're even working with a more current version. I am in the workspace that you see after a file has been opened or a new file has been created. Before you have a file open, Photoshop will open in a Start workspace, which is slightly different. The Start workspace has changed even more frequently than the Working workspace. So for this tutorial, I'm going to skip over the Start workspace and assume that you've already opened a file. I'm currently viewing this in what's referred to as the Essentials workspace. We can change workspaces quickly in the upper right hand corner here. If I click on this caret, it has a check mark by Essentials. If I was working on a 3D project, I might want to start by choosing the 3D workspace, which gives me a different set of panels over here. You'll see the tools on the left haven't changed, but we have different panel options. I have some custom ones that I've created up here. Let's go to My Clean. Often I'll use that when recording because I only have a handful of panels that I have left open for this workspace. But for this tutorial, I'm going to stay in the Essentials workspace, so I will go back to Essentials. Now, if something got messed up with this, let's take this off and close it up. Take this off and close it up. I could always fix my Essentials workspace by clicking on this again and going down here and saying Reset Essentials, and that returned those two panels where they were. Let's take a closer look at what these panels are all about. Photoshop offers a lot of panels. You can find a complete list under the Window drop-down menu. Everything in this section here is a panel. The ones with checks by them are the ones that are visible on the right hand side here. We can see them on our screen. We can see layers right here. Double clicking on a panel name will collapse it like a window shade. Double clicking on it again will open it. If I click these arrows up here, it'll collapse it down so that whole column of panels is just names. This is the history panel. If I click in the arrows here, it'll open that into a full panel. If I double click on the name history, that'll collapse down. So you have a lot of options of how you can view your panels or hide your panels. Having too many panels open could clutter your workspace, crowding the space that you have to work on your design. So you may want to close out the unessential ones. Let's reset this workspace back to the default setting. So we're going to reset Essentials and take a look at what's here with Essentials. First of all, right here in the center here, we have a Libraries panel. Creative Cloud libraries are an awesome way to share assets between applications and between other designers. But if you're brand new with Photoshop, you might not be ready to jump into that yet, and this Libraries panel might just get in your way. For example, you might not even see anything in your panel if you haven't added any assets to it. So if you click on the name and drag it out here, then you can click on this X, and now that's gone from your workspace. You could always get it back by resetting Essentials or going up to Window, but we don't need to have it on our workspace right now while we're working. Let's take a look at what's down the left hand side here. The History panel is a good one to keep open, and Properties is a good one. This third one is called Device Preview. Unless you're designing UI interfaces for, say, phones or tablets, you're not going to need this panel. So again, I'll just pull this out, hit the X, and then that'll go away. Paths. Paths are awesome, but they're more of an advanced user tool. And if you're a beginner Photoshop user, it may be a while before you start using paths. So you could pull this out and close the paths out. And at this point, I would keep everything that's left here. and I could create a new workspace that's my workspace. And the way we do that is go back up here to where the workspaces are and say New Workspace. When you click New Workspace, you have an option here to give it a name. So we'll just call this UI Tutorial. And I want everything saved the way that I have it on my screen here. So I'm going to say Save. Now if I was to change some other things here, make a mess out of my desktop, for example. Some people actually work this way, which is kind of crazy. I can't do that. So I've kind of made a mess of my desktop and I want to put it back to where it was. I can come down here and go down here to say Reset, and that should return all the panels to where I left them. Photoshop tools are in the toolbar on the left-hand side here. Because I'm recording this on a monitor with a lower resolution, we don't have the full height of the toolbar. There's a little bit being cropped off down here. If I click on the double caret arrow here in the upper left, it'll give me a double stacked toolbar. So if you're working on a smaller monitor or a laptop, you might want to switch that so that you can see all of the options. The little triangle in the lower right-hand corner of the tools denotes that there's more tools grouped and hidden under the tool that you see visible. Let's go to the brush tool, click and hold down, and we'll see that there's 3 more painting type tools hidden under the brush tool. If I switch this to the pencil tool, it now becomes the active tool that we see. So if you can't find your brush tool, it's likely hidden under the pencil tool. This section across the top is called the Options bar. The options change according to the chosen tool. So currently I'm on the pencil tool. If I switch to the Move tool, then the options in the Options bar change to be specific to that tool. With Photoshop, you can have multiple images open in the application at a time. And by default, those are displayed in what's called the tabbed view. If you look right across the top here, you can see the name of 3 different files. This is the one that's active that we're viewing here. If I click on this tab, it'll bring up a pano that I photographed. If I click on the 3rd tab, it'll bring up an image of a tiger that I photographed. If I want to go back to the original file that we've been looking at, I just click on this tab here. Across the very top we have the menu bar, and the best part about the menu items in the menu bar is that they can teach you keyboard shortcuts. Take a close look every time you go looking for a menu item, and what you see to the right hand side here is the keyboard shortcut. So to open a new document is Command N. To close a document is Command W, and you might recognize some of those keyboard shortcuts from other applications. Finally, I want to talk briefly about color and applying color because that's probably the most confusing part of this UI for new users. These 2 boxes here, the black and the white, are called the foreground and background color chips. So currently my active color is black. I can switch between the foreground and the background with these 2 arrows here. So clicking on that switches those around. I want to go to my brush tool and paint a color in over the text UI tour. I'm currently on the pencil tool because that's where I left off previously. I'm going to click and hold down and switch to the brush tool. Now, I don't want to paint with black. I want to paint with a color. If I click on the black chip, that brings up my color picker, and from here I could pick a color and say OK, and that changed that color chip to red. Or I can go over here to my color panel and do the same thing. Let's pull this triangle up here to the blue, and you'll see that as I select a blue color in the color panel, it changes this foreground color chip to blue. And so now my brush is loaded with blue and I can paint. I'm going to make a much bigger brush and I can paint in all of these letters to be blue. If I switch to another color, say green, I could paint in some stripes from there. I'm painting in my text by way of a layer clipped to my text layer. That's something I'll save for a future tutorial.